The Range Rover. This is a name that's synonymous all over the world for a vehicle that can take you anywhere you want to go and provide the accommodations that you might find in a 5-star luxury hotel. Today, let's take a look at this all-new Range Rover Sport and see if it has what it takes to bear that legendary name on the back. So those of you who are familiar with the Range Rover brand will know that the Sport is actually the company's best-selling model. It even outsells the smaller and less expensive Range Rover Evoque, but the Sport's actually been with us for a few years now. The company first introduced these smaller Range Rover back in 2006, and there were a couple of issues with the old one that a lot of enthusiasts and consumers noticed. For one, even though it was a Range Rover Sport, it didn't really drive too much like a Sport. It still felt just as big, just as cumbersome. It was still thirsty on fuel. And for Generation 2, I'm sitting in the all-new 2015 Range Rover Sport, and Land Rover actually just redesigned this car for 2014, and it's based on the new Range Rover chassis. If you guys can remember, the first generation car wasn't even built on the Range Rover chassis. It was actually the previous generation LR3 Discovery platform, which was heavier, it was slower, it wasn't as stiff as the Range Rover chassis. Now this all-new one sports the all-aluminum body that Land Rover introduced on the 2013 Range Rover when they completely redesigned it. So in terms of the weight, Land Rover has greatly reduced this weight of the car. The company claims that they reduced it by as much as 800 pounds. However, most publications have shown it's about 400 pounds lighter than the old one, which is still a pretty significant weight drop. Now, the Range Rover Sport is what I'd like to call the, I guess, the Big Daddy's partner. The Range Rover is the Big Daddy. It's the flagship SUV in their lineup, but this is supposed to be slightly smaller. You can see the design of this car has the traditional Land Rover design elements. It actually almost looks like a bigger Range Rover Evoque. I mean, the Evoque actually was very successful in terms of introducing a new design language for Land Rover that looks fantastic, and I like how Land Rover's carried it over. This car still has a big, imposing stance, and that's kind of the trademark design characteristic of this brand. You can see the front, you have the traditional design elements here, the nice grille, these sleek headlights with the LED daytime running lights. The car itself is very wide, it's very tall, and in typical Land Rover fashion, this vehicle has an adjustable air suspension where you can adjust it between a street mode or a loading mode where it's a little bit lower, the normal mode, and then of course there's an off-road mode where this car will actually offer up to 11 inches of ground clearance. Now in terms of the trim levels you can buy this car, and it actually comes in several, starting at the SE, mid-level HSE, and then I've got the SuperCharged model. From there on you can move up to the Autobiography, and then there's a new SVR trim that's new for 2015 that's an even higher performance version. Now the Range Rover Sport, when Land Rover redesigned this car, they introduced a new engine. There's a new 3-liter V6 under the hood, replacing the previous naturally aspirated 5-liter V8. I of course have the carryover engine that they introduced a couple of years ago. It's the 5-liter SuperCharged V8 with 510 horsepower, which just seems ridiculous for a vehicle like this, but I have to tell you, for you driving enthusiasts out there, you'd be surprised as soon as you drive this thing. Now, looking at the rest of the design profile, it has the traditional Land Rover elements on the side. It's a nice boxy shape, not too boxy, not like the Mercedes G-Class or Hummer, if Hummer was still in production. But you can see my tester has these optional 21-inch wheels, which look great. They fill out the wheel wells fantastically. You have 275 45 rubber filling out the wheel wells with Brembo brakes in the front and rear. Now coming out back, it has again that look of a Range Rover Evoque, and this is where you're going to be able to tell the differences between the Big Daddy Range Rover and the Sport, where the Range Rover has a much more distinctive looking rear end, which I think this one still looks good. I think it actually looks better than the Sport. I really like the dual exhaust outlet on this model. If you guys go for that new SVR trim, it'll actually have quad exhaust in the back. I mean, overall, I think this is a sleek, stylish SUV that's definitely different. If those of you who are quite tired of seeing those BMW X5, the Mercedes ML, the Porsche Porsche Cayenne, the Range Rover will definitely offer you something unique, and you'll get the traditional Land Rover heritage when you go for a vehicle like this. So in typical Land Rover fashion, this interior of this all-new Range Rover is simply exquisite. From the moment you open the door, you're greeted with a cabin that is just very warm, very inviting, and it just exudes a lot of class and high-quality materials. Now, in typical Land Rover fashion, again, when you get into this car, it's a pretty high step-in height, which is probably why Land Rover offers that adjustable suspension with the loading mode. Now, getting inside and shutting the door itself shuts with an amazing solid thunk, and you can see here the interior is just you have to kind of just sit here and take it in, or take it all in, because it's just really nice in here. Now, looking at the key for this car, you get a push button start that's standard on the Range Rover Sport. So basically all you have to do is put your foot on the brake and push this button, which is a little too high for my taste, to start the engine. Now, my particular tester has the dynamic package, and that rolls in that full TFT screen here, this LCD screen for the instrument cluster. And I have to say, it's a very nice looking screen for sure. And of course, that 5-liter V8 engine, that's basically the same engine you're going to find in the Jaguar F-Type R, is just a fabulous motor. We'll get into the driving dynamics later on in the video. Now, you can see here, the rest of this cabin is just very exquisite. I mean, this is one expensive SUV, and you can certainly tell when you first get inside this cabin, it's just all very nice. Now, the dashboard is actually covered in leather. The upper and lower portion is covered in leather. It's actually so soft that I could probably sleep on this dashboard, just because it's basically pillow soft. And you can see here, the rest of this interior, the door panels, they are soft leather on the upper portions, lower portion right here. It's even soft touch down here. Just a little bit hard touch plastic down here, which is okay. You're not really going to be touching that area. In typical Land Rover fashion, again, they do put the window switches up here. It's a little too high, at least for a smaller person like myself, but you can easily reach it when your hand is up here, and all the windows are all 4 automatic up down. You kind of expect that. And the steering wheel in this car, it's the traditional Range Rover steering wheel. You have actually a Range Rover badge here, just like the rest of the Range Rover line, instead of the Land Rover emblem. The leather feels good in your hands. You have steering wheel paddle shifters. The center stack here, this is actually Land Rover's older infotainment display. It's shared with some other Jags as well. The company actually has a new system they just introduced on the Discovery Sport. Now, there are a couple of gripes I have with the system. First of all, it's nicely integrated. There's a very minimalist in terms of buttons on this upper center stack. Come down here and you have a couple of other buttons that may confuse you if you've never been in a Range Rover. But basically, I'm at the home screen right now. You have your audio, or your different sources here. You have mode, you have audio video, you have your navigation function, which the map display in here actually looks pretty good. I'm actually quite pleased with it. I just wish that it was a little bit bigger. You know, this is an 8-inch display, which Land Rover says, but to be honest, you have some of the competitors that offer like a 12-inch display or a widescreen display, so I kind of wish that this whole screen was taken up by this complete bezel as opposed to the actual hard buttons on the side, or they're actually touch-sensitive buttons. This car actually has a 360-degree around view camera system, which I'm very disappointed with the graphics of the camera. That's one big gripe I have. It's just a very grainy, crappy looking display for the camera, which is weird because, you know, you go back to the map display here and it looks good when you go to the map display. So I'm a little confused onto why the backup camera or the camera system in general looks the way it does. This car, of course, has your typical sources here. You have your XM, HD radio, satellite radio, you have Bluetooth streaming audio, you have your USB. I mean, it funnels through a 19-speaker Meridian audio system with 900 watts of power, and it sounds fabulous. I have to say, this car's infotainment display, the speakers, the sound system sounds really good. It actually also has an automatic parallel parking system. When you push the button right there, this car will parallel park itself. It'll search for a parking spot. It works really well. I was quite pleased with it, to be honest. Now, looking at the rest of the center stack here, you have your dual zone automatic climate control, which I like the way Land Rover and Jaguar does this. They put the display for the temperature in here to kind of get rid of another screen. I really think other manufacturers should go with this, and you can see here, it's very nice quality knobs. The buttons feel good when you touch them. Pushing the climate here will actually bring up where you want to put your modes and such. You can sync the two displays right here if you want to. Now, looking at the rest of that, the heated seat control, I'm not really pleased with it. You have to push this button here and then it brings it up here. You actually have heated and cooled front and rear seats on this particular tester, so it's really nice that they include that. Putting the car into reverse, you have this BMW-like shifter, which is weird because Land Rover isn't owned by BMW anymore, so you kind of have to push this little trigger button right here to always engage the system. Push it and then pull it all the way back for drive. Push it once for neutral, and then push it again to go into reverse. And you see when you're in reverse, there's the backup camera. It has distance, it has trajectory, it has it has sensors front and rear and on the sides. So I mean, it's a really good system. I just wish the screen quality for the display was a little bit better. To put it in park, you actually have to push this button here that puts it in park. Now coming to the rest of this display here, or these buttons here, you can see here, this is for your adjustable suspension. This is your automatic speed limiter that's supposed to keep the car from exceeding a certain speed that you set. This is the auto start stop function. And then of course you have your traditional Land Rover modes here. You have a dynamic mode, which is for handling. You have just a normal mode. You have your, looks like snow, you have rock, you have sand. And then if you don't know what mode to put it in, just push this down and it puts it into automatic mode. And that's basically what I had it in most of the time, unless I was attacking a curvy road. Looking at the center stack here, first of all, the leather is very nice, and you actually have two armrests here. You have an armrest here, or you can use the center console armrest depending on the size of you. You can see here your USB, your aux, your power outlet is in there, and you have a little cool box in here too if you guys want to chill your drinks. That's really nice to have, and you can basically just turn it on from this switch right there. I mean, overall, this cabin is very nice. It has to be nice for the kind of money Land Rover charges. The glove compartment is actually an electronic button that you push there and it opens up. It's a pretty good size. It's lined with felt. I mean, the only thing I am noticing, looking above you, you have this nice huge panoramic sunroof that actually comes standard, but there are no sunglass holder here, and then the LED map lights, they're actually just touch sensitive. They're a little finicky to use sometimes, but I mean, it's a very minimalistic, high quality interior in here. It's just gonna take a little bit of getting used to, especially if you're not used to the dynamics or the interior design of a Land Rover Jaguar product. Now, the back seat of the Range Rover Sport is also a very nice place to spend time. You can actually get this car with an optional third row. My tester doesn't have it. It's about 2,000 bucks extra. It's for kids only, but it's nice that they at least give that to you, as the Mercedes ML, for example, doesn't give it to you, or the Cayenne. But you can see here, the legroom is pretty good. You have the same high quality materials from the front seats. They're carried over back here. And you can see, getting inside the car, it's a pretty nice place to spend time back here. You have 4-zone climate control back here as well. You have your heated and cooled seats as well. I mean, the leather feels really nice. You have a nice armrest here with some cup holders. The seats themselves, they split, fold down. And you can see here you have a very nice view with the panoramic sunroof. I mean, I wouldn't mind to spend time back here. It's just a really, really exquisite, roomy, comfortable place to commute in. Now, of course, being a Range Rover, a power tailgate is standard equipment. And you can see here, aside from a pretty high load floor, which you can actually adjust with the adjustable suspension, you have a pretty nicely finished cargo area. You're looking at just under 30 cubic feet with the seats up. You fold those second row seats down, you're gonna look at about 60 cubic feet, which is a little bit less than the competition. The Mercedes ML, for example, gives you about 80 cubic feet. But overall, the space is usable, it's nicely finished. And when you look under here, I was actually very happy about this. There's a full-size spare tire there with a matching alloy. I really wish other auto manufacturers would go with that. And I love that Land Rover gives you that full-size spare. Now, popping this monster of a hood, you're gonna find a pretty potent motor. This is a 5-liter direct injection supercharged V8. This is basically the same motor you're gonna find in a Jaguar F-Type. Or their XJ sedan. In this application, the engine makes 510 horsepower and 461 pound-feet of torque. Now, those are impressive numbers, to say the least. This engine actually competes head-on with the Mercedes ML63, the BMW X5M, the Porsche Cayenne Turbo, and it's all routed through an 8-speed automatic transmission. That's new for the Range Rover when they redesigned it. Of course, it goes to all 4 wheels via their full-time 4-wheel drive system with a low-range transfer case. Now, this car is quite potent, and it'll surprise you. But fuel economy won't surprise you. It's pretty much a gas guzzler, despite the fact that it has auto start stop technology. This vehicle's rated at 13 in the city, 17 on the highway. I've been averaging on the lower end of 13. So with your lead foot, which this car will basically tempt you to go fast. Let's get out on the road and see how all of this works together, though. So if you guys know me pretty well, you'll know that SUVs and trucks aren't necessarily my preferred type of vehicle on a personal note. However, driving around this for the last week, I have to say it's changed my perception on SUVs, just because I've always hated how a lot of trucks and SUVs, they felt either very boring car-like vehicles or they were just too big and cumbersome. However, this occupies a nice middle ground between sitting up high and driving something that's like a sports sedan, which is something I like. Let me get out on the road and show you exactly what I mean by that. And you can see this car's acceleration is just blisteringly quick. I was just incredibly shocked the moment I planted my foot. I mean, actually, when you drive the car around town normally, it's a little docile feeling. When the supercharge kicks in though, it just is just a shove, a kick in your pants. This is just ridiculous how fast this is. And I have never driven an SUV that accelerates as brutally hard as this car does, to be honest. It also has this fantastic noise. It sounds just like a Jaguar, which, I mean, I shouldn't be surprised. It's got a Jaguar engine in it, but I have to say, I'm just surprised. I never thought a Land Rover could have such a sexy exhaust note, and this car certainly does. From the outside, it sounds even better. I mean, a lot of people are just gonna be shocked when they first drive this SuperCharged V8 model and realize that really that noise is coming out of a Land Rover. And you know, with all this power, with that 8-speed automatic, with four-wheel drive grip, this car will get to 60 in about 4.6 seconds. Now, Land Rover says it's about 5 seconds, but honestly, I think that's really conservative. This thing pulls like a freight train. It just pulls incredibly hard. I will never get tired of doing that, and that's what brings me to my next point for this car. It's just incredible the way it drives. I mean, the old Range Rover Sport, I had a chance to drive a couple of those old ones with the 5-liter V8. I was always disappointed with them. They were so big, they were so heavy, they felt tippy. They just didn't feel like a sport version, basically, of the Range Rover. Versus, like, for example, if you drove a BMW X5M or a Mercedes ML, and this new one, that weight loss, the stiffer structure, the aluminum body, this thing goes down the road with the level of solidity you expect from a Land Rover, which the old one had that too, but this thing feels big and heavy, but it also feels nimble, it feels fun, it feels sporty. I mean, look at this view of the road. I absolutely love the view of the road. I mean, the fact that you can stare at those hood vents right there, which are functional, by the way, and they say Range Rover, you're just constantly reminded that you drive this type of vehicle. And you know, even on this curvy back road here, this car is just incredible. You put it into the dynamic mode here, you put the transmission to its sport mode, this car will attack the corners all day long, and it doesn't feel tippy and heavy like some of the traditional SUVs. This occupies a nice middle ground between sitting up high and giving you sport sedan handling dynamics. And even the visibility in here is great. My particular tester has the convenience package that gives you the blind spot monitoring. I honestly don't need it. You have this really great view of the road, you have big side mirrors, you have a great view out of the back, and then of course, in terms of the quietness, this car is that typical Land Rover quality. It goes down the road very quietly, there's barely any wind, road noise. You do hear a little bit of that engine noise from the exhaust, which sounds fantastic, so I'm not complaining. And then the steering in this car, you put it into dynamic mode, it's so precise, it's nice, and it has a really good feel to it. And this car just really will surprise you. It'll change your perception of driving an SUV, and that's what I think is important when you're going to spend this kind of money. Wow. Even at highway speeds, you know, get this up on the highway, and this car becomes the ultimate road trip car. I mean, you sit up so high, you're higher than everybody else. You have a very nice, quiet interior. You have these really comfortable seats. I mean, and even with this 8-speed automatic, you put into its economy modes here. You just put into automatic, you put into drive, and at 60 miles an hour, I'm basically idling. The engine is revving at 1500 RPM, which is supposed to aid with the fuel economy. Speaking of fuel economy, like I said before, this car's rated at 13.17. I've been getting, actually the computer says I'm getting 14.8. That was mostly on the highway. I was able to get it up to about 19 when I was being really light. So the EPA numbers are right, and you know, it is a thirsty vehicle. At least you're not hit with a gas guzzler tax, because this is an SUV, it's a truck, it's not a car. But its competitors roughly get the same. You have to remember this car competes with the ML63 AMG, the BMW X5, the new one, and then the Porsche Cayenne Turbo. They're all going to be in the 4.5 second range. They all have a burly V8 engine that's boosted, and I have to say that this is a interesting class of car. And that brings me to a few of its competitors. The Range Rover Sport, you know, it occupies a higher end class. This does not compete with the Acura MDX. It does not compete with the Lexus RX, simply because those models don't offer a performance model like this, which of course you could step down to the V6 and you could compare it to an MDX at that point. But there's a certain level of specialness and solidity. For example, no other car, or at least those car-based vehicles, will not compete with this car off-road, and that's what Land Rover is known for. Even though this is the Sport, this car still has incredible off-road credentials. I mean, you can see here, I have it on this 4x4 info display, which will show you the wheel articulation. This car will actually, it has locking front and mid diffs. It actually will decouple the anti-roll bars during off-road moments where you can get a little bit better wheel articulation. This car also has sonar around the car, where it'll actually, if you go tread water in this thing, if you're going to go forward water, you can actually, it actually will measure the depth of the water, and it'll tell you if you're going too deep. So I mean, in terms of the off-road capability, this car is the best of both worlds. You can adjust the suspension into the off-road mode, and you can go in forward water that's like almost 3 feet deep, or go attack rocks and trails, or you can put it into the dynamic mode, which is what I like, and attack the corners with this thing, and it's just phenomenal. So in terms of the, you know, usability, for the money, Land Rover's pretty much, you know, nailed that, where some of its competitors are more oriented toward performance, but they can't do it off-road, and then the other ones are more off-road, like the G63, but they can't really do as much as well on the road. Now, of course, when you have a vehicle that's this well-rounded, you're probably gonna know that it's gonna cost you a big chunk of change, and the Range Rover Sport won't disappoint in that environment. In fact, actually, this car starts at a reasonable $63,000 for the base V6 model. Of course, I don't have that model. I've got the supercharged model. This starts at just under $80,000, about $79,000. Of course, being that this is a European car, it's a British car to be more specific. There are several different option groups that you can get on this car that'll make it even more expensive. My particular tester has the dynamic package for $2,500. I would highly recommend that. It gives you bigger wheels, bigger brakes, a unique front end. It gives you just kind of, it turns it more into the sport-oriented model, and then it also gives you that screen in the instrument panel here. My particular tester also has the luxury climate package. That's about $3,500. That gives you the heated and cooled front seats, some upgraded audio system. It's a bunch of other niceties. At least nav and panoramic sunroof is standard, and the push button start. Of course, you can also option for the Meridian package, which my particular tester has, that 19-speaker audio system, which sounds great. I mean, basically all in, mine's about 93, just under 94 grand, which is pretty expensive. However, if you're going to look at the Porsche Cayenne, the Mercedes ML, those start at $100,000 to start before you add on options, although they do come pretty well equipped. I mean, this is a unique class of car. I mean, you're going to spend about $100,000 if you want a fast, powerful luxury SUV like this that can, you know, you can use for the best of both worlds. Now, overall, my gripes are few with this car. It could use a better nav display, or a better camera display. The screen could be a little bit larger. Fuel economy kind of sucks, but I mean, this car has a 28-gallon gas tank, so expect that. I mean, all of its competitors are guzzling fuel. For me, I would gladly pay for the gas just to have this much power. But I mean, overall, I really love this car. I think it's fantastic. I think it looks great. I think it's potent. I think it's great to drive. I think it's comfortable. It's quiet. And it's definitely a well-rounded vehicle. If you guys can afford this kind of a car, the Range Rover Sport is definitely, it occupies a nice middle ground and offers the best between a lot of its competitors wrapped into this stylish package. And really my only concern really is the Land Rover brand in general. This brand is not known for having excellent reliability, but I guess if you're going to have one of these things, if you can afford it, you're not too concerned with that. If anything ever breaks, just take it to the dealership, and they'll basically take care of it. Now, anyways, hope you guys have enjoyed my overview of this 2015 Range Rover Sport with the supercharged V8. If you are in the market for this type of vehicle and you can afford it, make sure you check this car out, especially if you're looking at the BMW and the Porsche and the Mercedes. This thing's definitely worth a look, and it's definitely different compared to something that your neighbor may drive. Anyways, if you guys are looking to see what I'm up to, make sure you follow me on my Instagram channel, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can keep bringing you more reviews. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you all in the next review.